Hey everyone, it's me, Joseph. Today's video is going to be me making choux pastry. This is a nice, simple, sweet pastry that is actually pretty weird because you actually cook it twice. But I think it's a really cool pastry. You can use it for eclairs, cream puffs, all that sort of thing. So I'm going to show you how to make that. So without further ado, let's see what you need. So here we have our ingredients. I'm going to start it off with the butter. I've got 77 grams of unsalted butter here. I've got 3 eggs. Eggs are a little bit tricky. You might actually not need all 3 eggs in this. I'll explain that later. I have 167 mils of water. You can also use milk. The end result you get more flavor, but less crispy. I've tried both. I prefer it with water. Got 100 grams of baker's flour, 13 grams of caster sugar, and finally, just a little salt. So what we first want to do is we want to melt some butter in a saucepan. And I'm going to do it on a medium to high heat. Okay, add our butter in. I'll give you guys a look. Once it is just about melted, go ahead and add in your water, your sugar, and your little bit of salt. Just starting to come to a boil. Let's get that flour in. Now I'm going to take it from the heat, put it to the side, keep the heat on. It'll turn off anyway because my stove isn't great, unfortunately. And I'm just going to pour all my flour in at once. That is very important, by the way. Now, mix it in. Make sure there's no lumps. Make sure you don't make a mess as well, like me. And then just turn that heat back on. So you're mixing it in roughly, making sure that there are no lumps in the flour. And what you'll get is something that looks, I'll see if I can show you, a little bit like this. And this is the start of our dough. Now what we want to do is it needs to all come together into a ball shape. Again, kind of like that. And we're going to cook it off for a little bit longer, for about 2 minutes, I want to say. And the reason we're doing this, we're just getting rid of any excess moisture on the dough. But also just make sure you're moving the dough around, because if you leave it in one place, it's obviously going to burn. So just keep playing with it. Yeah, after your 2 minutes is up, we'll move to the next step. This is a little look-see at how it looks when it's done. It's not finished yet, obviously, but this is the first part of the actual pastry that's finished. We're gonna cook it off again, but first what we want to do is we want this to cool. And we want it to cool to around 60 degrees. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna add in our eggs. And if our pastry is too hot, you can get this awkward eggy taste. So just keep that in mind, be patient. And, you know, your pastry might feel cool on the outside and ready. But if you actually mix it around, what will happen is steam, like you can see here, if you can see, is actually coming off the dough, or the pastry, sorry. And that indicates that it's not ready. So there shouldn't really be any steam coming from the dough. If there is, it's too hot. So just keep that in mind. You can have a little bit of a mix with the dough as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, once you've done that, just wait for it to cool to around 60 degrees. It's just warm now. I would say it could have been a teeny bit hotter, but that's okay. Gonna add in our eggs now. Now, not all your eggs at once, okay? Not all your eggs. We're gonna do this one at a time, ladies and gentlemen. No rush, please. my first egg. Now, to the side. Make sure that the first egg is well combined before you add the second, okay? Don't rush this. This is very important, incorporating the egg into the mixture, okay? This is, I would argue, probably the most important thing of all in making a choux pastry. Yeah, the base is pretty important, but we're not just gonna, cook up that base straight away. We want to enrich it as well with that egg and really allow it to rise. And so that's what this is gonna do for us. Yeah, and it might not look like it's coming into a dough now, but just give it a little bit of patience. And what you'll find is that this really starts to come together. Okay, that's well combined, and that's egg number 1. Egg number 2. In you go. And after this egg, what's going to happen is this is going to start to become a lot more soft, this mix, or this pastry, I should say. Right, nice. So it's going to get it a little bit more now, which is good. Getting a little bit more of that consistency, but it's not quite there. And when I say not quite, it's really nowhere near close. We still want it to be in more of a liquidy state. It's too solid at the minute. This last egg, I'm not going to add in straight away. I'm going to whisk this down with a fork. And once I've whisked it down with a fork, I'm going to add the eggs not one at a time, bit by bit. Because the thing about choux pastry is, the difference between a good and a bad batch can be all in the eggs. If you add too little, obviously it's just not going to come together. But if you add too much, it can become, what's the word I'm looking for here? It can become too much like a liquid. And basically, when you get that, your pastry doesn't really rise properly. It's sticky and that's okay. That's not the end of the world. A little bit more. And this as well comes down to a little bit of experimentation. And what's interesting about it is that the less liquid you've got in your dough, the more eggs you're going to add. And so when I say liquid, that liquid that you cooked off earlier in the saucepan, that's what I'm referring to. And the more liquid you've got, the less eggs. I'll show you what it looks like, but it'll be nice and glossy. And this is definitely not glossy, it'll be smoother. This is not quite smooth yet, but it's close. Yeah. Not quite there. I actually think I'm gonna add the rest of my egg for this batch. And I think that is, yeah, here we go. This is it. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Yeah, so it's, again, on the topic of eggs, it's going to be different for every batch you make. It's not going to be the same. Sometimes you might use the whole mixture of eggs. Sometimes you might only use 2.5. Now this is a lot better. This is very nice. I like this. Now, I've seen a couple of ways you can test it. So the first one is you'll basically prick your finger across. And if that there stays upright, then that's a sign that that the pastry is good. And the second, this one here is called the V test. Get the spoon, put it in, and what you want is if that creates a V like this on the spoon, you'll see it. Then that is also another sign that's ready. Now, obviously, it's not just these two tests. You have to look at it based on visual appearance. Is it glossy? Is it smooth? Does it have the right consistency and all that? So there are a couple of other tests that you will need to obviously take as well. But those two are some really good ones that I really do like using. Okay, so I've got my choux pastry in the little piping bag. We're gonna pipe this out. And I will say something that's very embarrassing. I don't have access to any baking paper at the minute because I forgot to buy some. And the really, really annoying thing is, I set myself a reminder to buy some. I don't know why I didn't. And I actually did the exact same thing the last time I practiced making this. And I'll tell you what, it didn't actually end up too bad, but I'm gonna hope that it doesn't end up too bad again. So I've just greased this with a little bit of butter so it doesn't stick. Now I'm gonna highly recommend, obviously don't do this. Obviously use baking paper, but yeah, I'm a little bit desperate here at the minute, so I'm just gonna use what I've got. Now, we are gonna pipe this in. Tie the end on this. I'm using a fairly big nozzle to pipe this out here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a couple of different shapes because we're gonna do a couple of different things with our choux pastry, which I'm gonna show you once they're actually cooked. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a classic cream puff shape. And to do that, I'm gonna start here. I'm just gonna go around, and around, and around, and around until I get to the top. Like that. That's a little bit thick, but I do like mine a little bit thick. Now, as for what we're gonna do with the rest of this, we're gonna use this to make some donut shapes. So what I'm gonna do is, these are gonna be fairly medium sized. I'm just gonna go around, and then I'm just gonna make one little puff here with the rest of this, just because I want to get the most out of this I can. There we go, that's something. Now, this is going to go in the oven, and we're gonna leave it on 190 degrees and for around 35 to 45 minutes. One cool thing that you should definitely do before you put these in the oven is dop them with a little bit of water. And the reason I'm doing this is because these top bits tend to burn. And so by pinning them down a little bit, it stops that really irritating color from coming on an almost perfect cream puff. Another thing I'll do as well, I'll just scatter. Be careful when you do it, try not to get any on the pastry. But I'm just gonna scatter around a little bit of water. And this is just gonna help it rise because the water will evaporate into steam. And steam is good for rising this pastry. Now, let's put it in the oven. Okay, it's been 30 minutes and this is how they're looking so far. Pretty damn sexy. We're gonna make them even sexier. Open the oven door. I'm gonna skewer each of these. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because I want the heat to actually get inside the choux pastry to cook it. But I only want to implement this step 10 minutes prior to when my choux pastry is actually ready. And what I find as well is that this really helps get rid of that egg taste as well. I've done this and it does help cook the inside that little bit. It does help make it that little bit crispy as well. So I really like that. Okay, here they are. Now, first of all, I'm just really surprised that my donut-shaped choux pastry actually didn't turn out looking too bad. But second thing I'm surprised about is these aren't stuck at all, and the bottoms look fairly okay. So yeah, obviously, again, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's worked with butter on the bottom, but no baking paper. So yeah, happy days to that. I'm super glad for that. Now I'm gonna actually move on to some toppings. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is this topping here that I'm gonna make is gonna be for our donut-shaped choux pastry. I did forget to mention, by the way, you should leave that choux pastry to cool for about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, what I've got here, I've got two things. Cold water and some icing mixture. You can't really see that icing mixture. There you go. Now, we want to make this decently thick. Since I don't have that much of the donut choux pastry, it's actually I don't need that much. So I would say about this much here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pour my water in with it. And then just mix that around. Now I'm just going by the feel of this. I can already tell straight up that is too little icing sugar. Way too little icing sugar. Let's get some more in there. Now what we want this is we want this to thicken up. We want it to thicken up and be, I want to say the best describing word is gravy thickness. Consistency, even a bit more than gravy, I'd say, to be honest. But it's quite good. And if I taste for that texture, that's perfect. It's like, I won't double dip. I would describe it and say it's almost like an icing. It's an icing, but thinner, is what it is. Yeah. But that is absolutely freaking perfect. Now, next up, while that's just out here, I've just got some whipping cream as well. I'm just gonna whip that up. Here we go. You'll notice the inside of my choux pastry, if you can see, is it's risen quite a bit actually. And that's a really good thing. You want the inside to be nice and hollow. Now I'm gonna do two different things. This first thing here, this is whipping cream. And we're gonna fill these donuts with some whipping cream. And a very generous amount of that. Now put the tops on. And oh God, my favorite bit is this little beauty right here. Watch this, you ready? This that we made is going all on top of it. Not all of it, I won't lie, all is a little bit too much. Ah! Finally, I've got some nice pieces of almond. I'm just gonna top on top there. The standard formula is to do a little bit of whipped cream with caster sugar, and then you do that with a little bit of vanilla essence. And you mix that all together, whip it up until it becomes kind of like whipping cream, but a little bit different. But screw that formula is what I say. I say screw that formula because you can actually just fill cream puffs with ice cream. And that is exactly what I'm gonna do. And finally, we do the best part. We top it with a little bit of icing sugar. Yeah, look at that. All right, I'm putting this in the fridge. I'm gonna leave that to chill for a few minutes and then we're gonna bring that baby out. Okay, so fast forward a little bit in time. I have just gotten home from work. It's a bit late, but I did try the dishes. It was just that literally the moment I finished making it, I literally needed to speed off to work. So I will tell you my opinions on both, give an honest rating of from 1 to 10 on each. For those of you who don't know how my rating system works, I score from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst of that type of food I've ever had, 5 being borderline average, and 10 being the best I've ever had. So I want to start by saying first though, that the choux pastry itself was perfect. Without the toppings and everything, I'm super duper happy with how that came out. Really nice and crispy, really nice and good. And the the tray on the bottom, just being done with butter, didn't actually affect it all that much, which is I'm really grateful for. Thank God for that. Now, what would I give it? I'm going to start with the cream puffs, except they don't have cream; they've got ice cream in them. I'd give them an 8.5. I really like them. I've made the cream puffs with cream before, but I definitely think I prefer ice cream. Ice cream is way better choice. And the second thing, that donut choux pastry, I don't know what that's called. I'm gonna say a 9.5. It's very good. It's very, very good. That icing sugar mixing on top is like, oh, it brings it all together. And then the nuts on top. It's like, it's probably my favorite thing to do with puff pastry. Not puff pastry, with choux pastry. Yeah, it's really good. So thank you guys for watching if you did. And yeah, I put a lot of effort into this one as well. So yeah. That's it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.